You may recognize this problem before you know how to name it. By the end of this session, you will leave with one clear way to notice the pattern, one response you can use under pressure, and a 7-day test for deciding whether it genuinely helps. Useful ideas vanish because they are captured without a next action or audience. An idea does not disappear because it was weak. It disappears because it never became a promise for one specific reader. The goal is not to fix everything. It is to stop one repeat before tomorrow begins. Notice exactly when the problem appears. Write the reader the problem and the smallest useful result your idea can deliver. Keep the action small enough to repeat on a tired day. Use the next section as a practical working session for people who recognize this problem. Useful ideas vanish because they are captured without a next action or audience. You do not need special tools, a perfect plan, or a dramatic burst of motivation. You only need enough attention to notice one pattern and enough patience to test one smaller response. Keep one result in view. This mini-book turns a loose idea into a small product someone can understand and buy. Finish the first version tonight. We will slow the problem down, examine how it repeats, walk through the useful parts of the mini-book, and finish with an action you can actually remember when the day becomes busy. Keep a blank note nearby. You will not be asked to document your whole life. At a few points, pause and write one sentence. That sentence is not homework for later. It is the bridge between listening now and behaving differently tomorrow. Long advice often fails because it gives you too many decisions at once. This session takes the opposite approach. We will examine the mechanism, compare realistic situations, and reduce the lesson to a response that remains usable when attention is limited. Behavioral science often describes this gap as the difference between intention and action. An intention states what you value. A prepared response defines what happens when a trigger appears. The principle matters because good intentions alone do not specify timing, environment, or the first visible movement. Cognitive science also gives us the idea of attentional capture. Urgent feelings and visible cues can temporarily crowd out quieter goals. The answer is not to distrust every feeling. It is to place one useful cue or sentence close enough to the moment that your longer-term judgment can re-enter the decision. For example, consider a person who understands the advice perfectly at night, but meets the same trigger the next afternoon. Without a prepared response, the old sequence wins in seconds. With one written sentence and a stopping rule, the person does not become flawless. They simply create enough space to choose once. The second example looks different. Someone follows a complicated plan for 3 days, misses the fourth, and abandons everything. The failure is not a lack of seriousness. The plan had no recovery rule. A durable method decides in advance how to resume after interruption without punishment or extra work. Part 1. What is really happening? Begin by locating the pattern in a real day. We are separating the event from the story built around it, because an accurate description gives you more options than self-criticism does. Name the pattern before trying to solve the whole problem. Start by treating this as an observable sequence rather than a judgment about your character. Write what happened immediately before the moment, what you felt pulled to do, and what followed. That short sequence gives you a place to intervene. Vague frustration cannot guide a better response, but a visible trigger and consequence can. Close what is really happening by naming the earliest signal you can notice next time. Recognition is the only task at this stage. You do not need to solve the entire sequence in advance. Part 2. The small reset. This section moves from recognition to response. Keep the useful action narrow, visible, and independent of a perfect mood so it can survive the moment when you need it. Use one rule only. A smaller action is easier to repeat when energy is low. Consider this principle in plain language. Behavior is easier to change when the desired response is decided before pressure arrives. Do not wait for the difficult moment to invent a perfect answer. Prepare one sentence or physical action while calm, then use it as a default when attention narrows. At the end of the small reset, write the response in language you would actually use. Remove any instruction that sounds impressive but would disappear under pressure. Part 3. The 7-day test. Now treat the idea as a short experiment rather than a permanent identity change. Limited test makes room for honest evidence, adjustment, and recovery. Repeat the same small action for 7 days. Record what changed without adding a new system. This mini-book turns a loose idea into a small product someone can understand and buy. Finish the first version tonight. At home, this may appear in a small moment that seems harmless until it repeats. Notice the first 10 seconds because that is usually where choice still exists. After the old response gathers speed, willpower becomes expensive. A useful plan moves the decision earlier and makes the acceptable action obvious. Finish the 7-day test with one measure for the coming week. Choose a visible behavior or recovery time, not a demand to feel perfectly different by a deadline. Before building the weekly test, separate a useful method from a promise of total control. This practice can improve your own response, preparation, and recovery. It cannot guarantee another person's reaction, remove every difficult circumstance, or replace professional help when safety, health, debt, abuse, or severe distress is involved. A realistic boundary around the method protects its value. Next, choose the scale of the experiment. Use one recurring situation, not every version of the problem across your life. Narrow scope helps you notice cause and effect. If the setting changes each day, the result becomes hard to interpret. If the setting remains recognizable, even a small improvement can teach you what to keep. Decide how you will record evidence without turning the practice into constant self-surveillance. One line after the event is enough. Situation, response, result. Avoid scoring your worth or guessing what somebody else thought. The record exists to show whether your chosen behavior happened and whether recovery became clearer or faster. Finally, preserve room for revision. A plan that fails honestly has still produced information. Maybe the cue appeared too late, the action was too large, or the stopping rule was unclear. Change one variable after the review. Altering everything at once may feel decisive, but it removes your ability to learn which adjustment mattered. Now let us turn the ideas into a 7-day test. 7 days is long enough to reveal a pattern and short enough to feel concrete. The goal is not a perfect streak. The goal is evidence about what helps, what creates friction, and what needs to become smaller. Day 1 is observation. Do not force a dramatic change. Notice when the problem appears. Write the time and situation, and record the first impulse that follows. End the note after 1 minute, so observation does not become another exhausting project. Day 2 is preparation. Put the smallest useful response where you will see it before the old habit begins. That might be one sentence on your phone, one object placed in view, or one limit decided while your mind is calm. Day 3 is the first deliberate repetition. Use the same small action. Write the reader, the problem, and the smallest useful result your idea can deliver. Do not improve it yet. Repetition gives you better information than constant adjustment because it separates a weak method from an unfamiliar method. Day 4 is friction review. Ask what almost stopped you. Was the action unclear, hidden, too large, or dependent on another person or tool? Remove one obstacle and keep every other part of the test the same. Day 5 is the tired day test. Assume your energy is lower than usual and use the smallest acceptable version. A routine that works only on your best day is inspiration. A routine with a tired day version can become dependable. Day 6 is recovery. If you missed a day, resume without compensation. Do not double the task or punish yourself with a stricter rule. The ability to restart quickly matters more than protecting a perfect record. Day 7 is review. Read the 7 short notes and look for one change you can actually see. Keep the part that reduced friction. Remove the part that required too much effort. And write the next version in one sentence. Several objections may appear during this process. The first is that the action seems too small to matter. Small does not mean meaningless. It means the action is designed to happen consistently enough to produce evidence instead of remaining an impressive intention. The second objection is that you should solve the entire problem while motivation is available. That urge feels efficient, but it often creates a system too heavy to maintain. Use motivation to simplify the next step, not to multiply future obligations. The third objection is that one missed day ruins the test. It does not. A missed day is information about context and friction. Record what happened. Reduce the next action if necessary, and continue without turning one interruption into an identity. The fourth objection is impatience. You may understand the idea before your behavior changes. Understanding is the map. Repetition is the travel. Give the action enough ordinary attempts before deciding whether it deserves to stay. Take a final quiet minute now. Name the situation you expect to face, the old response that usually follows, and the smaller response you are choosing instead. Make each part concrete enough that tomorrow you can recognize the moment without replaying this entire session. Here is the complete reset in one line. Notice the pattern. Choose one boundary and write the reader, the problem, and the smallest useful results your idea can deliver. That is enough for the first version. You can make it more sophisticated only after the simple version has worked in real life. Find the first real moment when this mattered last week. Describe only what a camera could have seen. Then add the feeling or assumption that influenced your response. Separating observation from interpretation makes the next choice easier to evaluate. Put the automatic response in one column and the prepared response in another. Under each, List the likely result 1 hour later. Choose the option whose later consequence matches the person you want to be. Rehearse the skill first where the emotional cost is low. Decide where you can practice the same movement with less pressure. Then carry that familiar response into the harder context. Replace abstract wording with visible behavior. State who acts, what happens, and where the response ends. Concrete language keeps reflection from becoming another form of delay. Use one rule only. Name one cost to time, one to attention, and one to self-respect or trust. This is not an invitation to create shame. It makes the trade-off visible enough to support a deliberate choice. Recall one occasion when the problem was smaller or absent. Note what changed in the environment, timing, expectation, or preparation. An exception can reveal a practical condition worth recreating. Assume you will forget or react badly once. Decide the next healthy action, how soon it can happen, and what punishment you will refuse to add. Recovery keeps one mistake from becoming a new pattern. Give one ordinary example that would make sense to a skeptical friend. If the example requires a perfect person or an ideal day, simplify it until someone could test it tomorrow without buying a tool or rebuilding a schedule. Finish the first version tonight. Decide when reflection is complete and ordinary life resumes. A clear ending protects useful thought from turning into rumination, repeated checking, or endless preparation disguised as responsibility. Mark what happens 10 minutes before the critical moment, during it, and 10 minutes after. Select one place where a small response could change the direction without requiring control over anyone else. Find one cue that strengthens the old response and one cue that could support the new one. Move, mute, prepare, or write something today so tomorrow's better option is easier to notice. Write one sign that the method helped, one sign it needs adjustment, and one sign the situation requires support beyond a self-guided exercise. Clear criteria prevent premature abandonment and blind persistence. Write the trigger on one line, the chosen response on the second, and the stopping point on the third. Keep it brief enough to read once without opening a longer planning session. Use one rule only. Replace any all-or-nothing demand with a minimum acceptable version. The smaller version should preserve the principle while lowering the effort needed to begin or recover. Ask whether the response respects other people's time, consent, and boundaries while protecting your own. A useful method does not require pressure, deception, or control over another person's decision. Choose a likely time and place tomorrow, then attach the response to something already happening. A real appointment with context is easier to follow than an intention floating somewhere in the day. Imagine having half your usual patience and attention. Remove optional steps until the response remains possible. Keep the full version as a bonus rather than the minimum required for success. End this review by choosing what you will ignore. This mini-book turns a loose idea into a small product someone can understand and buy. Finish the first version tonight. Name one metric, opinion, or imagined outcome that does not help the next action. Attention improves when the plan excludes noise as clearly as it includes a response. Make a final pre-commitment from this point. Useful ideas vanish because they are captured without a next action or audience. Decide the response now. Write it where the trigger will appear, and specify the first moment when you may review the decision. Delaying reconsideration protects a calm choice from being renegotiated by every passing impulse. Picture the moment at the end of a difficult day when the old response feels most tempting. Choose one physical transition, such as leaving the room, closing the app, or starting a routine that marks the decision as finished. Separate the part you control from the part you can only observe. Put your behavior, timing, and words in the first group. Put another person's reaction and every imagined future outcome in the second. Then plan only from the first group. Notice the first sentence your mind produces under pressure. Write a calmer replacement that is accurate, without being flattering or cruel. The goal is not positive thinking. It is language that leaves room for a responsible next action. Use one rule only. Compare tonight's impulse with the advice you would give yourself 1 week from now. Distance often reveals which response protects dignity, time, and attention after the immediate emotion has passed. Decide who can provide perspective without feeding the old pattern. Choose one person who respects boundaries. Then ask for a short reality check rather than an hour of repeated analysis. Protect the next ordinary commitment on your calendar. Completing work, exercise, sleep, or a planned conversation reminds you that one painful event belongs inside a larger life rather than replacing it. At the final review, ask whether your response reduced pursuit, checking, argument, or avoidance. Keep the behavior that shortened the recovery cycle even if the uncomfortable feeling did not disappear immediately. Finish the first version tonight. Choose one sentence that closes the event without denying what happened. Say it once. Follow the prepared action and let the next hour contain something unrelated. Confidence returns through ordinary choices that continue after disappointment. For a short reset on the thinking pattern behind this topic, read the BookSell mini-book, Why Good Ideas Disappear, a mini-book. It gives you a compact exercise you can review without replaying the full session. Use the link in the description to read the mini-guide on BookSell.